The Converted Man here. Yes. Questions. Questions for the unbeliever. 10 of them. Because that's what we're going to do. So Dr. Tertius Venter has this intro into Christian apologetics. And I don't know what the purpose of these 10 questions are, but I guess he's saying to the hopeful apologists that these are questions asked the non-believer. So, hey, I'm a non-believer. You could have just asked me, and then you would have the answers for that, at least from one non-believer, to put into the book, or, well, the presentation that you're doing here. But he didn't do that, so I guess I'm just going to answer these questions to the best of my ability, and you all can chime in with your answers to these questions. I'm sure that they'll be well formatted. None of them will be loaded, and okay, I better get going before I bust up laughing. All right. Hopefully you can see that. Let's make it bigger. All right. All right, well, that's as big as I can get it. Whatever. Number 1, how do you get something from nothing? Well, I don't know. Who is claiming that you can get something from nothing? What do you mean by nothing? Who has, why, so those are important. So what do you mean by nothing? That's important, okay? If you mean by nothing, the philosophical idea of nothing, I have no example of a nothing, so I don't know that nothing is a thing that anything can be in the first place. But I have never personally made the claim that something comes from nothing, nor do I need to make that claim. But before I answer any of these questions, I need to point out the simple fact that not knowing the answer to any of these questions does in no way prove your side correct. Being unable and or unwilling to answer these questions is completely and wholly irrelevant to your burden of proof. Having said that, I don't make the claim that something can come from nothing. So why do I need to answer this? I do not know the answer to this. I don't know if there is a nothing or ever was a nothing, or that nothing is actually possible to have. And I also don't know that something came from nothing. So I have no idea. I cannot answer this question no matter what I do with it. No matter, even if I rephrase it, it's still a non-question. It's essentially a loaded question. It's assuming that I am making the claim that something is coming from nothing. It's also assuming that I know what you mean by nothing, which I don't. And at the end of the day, the answer to this is I have never made that claim. And I don't know of anyone that makes that claim that's an atheist or a non-believer. So that answers that question, I guess. Number 2, how do you get life from non-life? Well, what is life? That's a very difficult question to answer, right? Like, what is alive? And what we consider to be alive and not alive are very tricky. So we need a definition for what does it mean to be alive, that's really like detailed. So I don't know what to do about that. I guess we could get one from like Google or something, because there isn't one given here. So I don't know. Let's just use that. Whatever. Life is a quality that distinguishes matter that is a biological process, such as signaling and self-sustaining processes, from that which does not, and is defined by the capacity for growth, reaction to stimuli, metabolism, energy transformation, and reproduction. All right. Okay, cool. But virus is alive. Is virus alive or not alive? No, viruses are not alive. Yes, viruses are alive. Wait, what? Which is it? what does it mean to be alive? This is a is this a scientific paper? Well, it's Microbiology Society. Okay. Uh, Viruses are proteins, a genetic material that survive or replicate within their environment inside another life form. In the absence of the host, they're unable to replicate and unable to survive for long. So they cannot survive independently. Can they be defined as being alive? So then it goes on from there and has opposing views on it. And I guess I have to link that in the description of this video now. Sure, why not? Okay, so it's a difficult question because it depends what you mean by alive. But you're asking like what? Like the basic chemicals that we had, abiogenesis. Um I don't know how that works. I'm not a scientist. I'm not an abiogenicist. So again, you're asking the wrong person here. Um, so yeah, here's some stuff on that via Google. Again, it's just image searching on Google, and it's like here's photosynthesis, polymers, protocells, and then diversity of life. So it doesn't look like we really know. But yeah, this is a creationist idea. Yeah, let's go to that one. That one's good. Let's go to that. Hold on. Okay. I guess we'll just have this webpage link. Sure, I'm getting all these links now for citations. Which would have been good to have on your video, Doctor, but whatever. So the real theory of abiogenesis is simplified. Simple chemicals, polymers, replicating polymers, hypercycle, protobiont bacteria. And then for creationists, it's just simple chemicals to bacteria, which that's what they think is going on, but no, it's all these things in between. So is the polymer alive? I don't know. It depends what you call life. Is it now that it replicates? Is it alive? Kind of, not yet. When it gets to the hypercycle, maybe when it is alive is hard to pin down to an exact point because it's going through this very slow transition from chemical to the final stage of bacteria. So, but it does happen, and we know that it happens. So that it's something that you would have to explore and learn. You should know this. This is this is biology, right? Okay, it's a very specific set of biology, but why are you asking this question? Why are you expecting the non-believer to know this? Do you know how abiogenesis works? If so, publish some papers on it. If you don't, then read some papers about it. Go to the scientists. Go to the peer-reviewed documents. You would know how to read those, right? So read those. Why should I have to provide you that answer? I can, say, well, I know that it's out there. Here's a couple things about it. If you want a peer-reviewed paper on it, I'll find you one if you really need me to, I guess. But it's this weird question that's like, well, but how does that work? Well, I don't know how it works. And number 3, how do you get a mind conscious from matter? I don't know. No idea. Now you're talking neurology, I suppose. So why does the brain have consciousness? Because it does. It's an emergent property that the brain does. Why? I have no idea. How? I don't even have a clue how. This is way beyond me. But it happens. We have the brain, which is matter, and we have consciousness. And if you begin to take chunks of the brain away, that consciousness radically changes. So it's obviously tied into that matter. Now, if you What's interesting is the brain is adaptable. If you slowly take away the matter, it can adapt. This one guy, I'd have to dig for the thing, but this one guy I'd read about had a really hard headache. He went to the doctor, they did the x-ray, and they found that like he had like, I don't know, like a very, very small brain, and like most of his head was filled with water. And he'd had this like some sort of gland or whatever that had become cancerous, and so all this water was building up, whatever the reason was. And the brain had slowly shrunk from the pressure, but he was still functioning really normally because it had been slowly gathering over time. So if you do it slow enough, it appears the brain is able to adapt to the changes. And how much of a brain one needs to be conscious is a question worth asking. There are people born with just a brain stem. They don't appear to have consciousness, at least as we would normally recognize it, but yet they are alive. They can do basic things, but it doesn't seem like they can learn as an individual. They usually don't survive very long, like maybe a year at best, probably even less than that. But again, it seems that the brain structure is necessary for consciousness. And then once you have it, you can reduce the brain structure slowly over time, and it will adapt. But if you do it suddenly, then things are drastic. And of course, there's been studies of dual brain hemispheres that you could look into where they cut the hemisphere. And this one I remember, and again, I'd have to dig it up if you really want me to. The one guy, his left side of the brain did not believe in God, and the right side of the brain did believe in God. So I guess only part of his brain's going to paradise. But again, why would you think I know the answer to that question, and why does it matter? Okay, how do you get design without a designer? Well, depends what you mean by design. Depends what you would consider design. So there's plenty of examples of of faces that appear to be on rocks that aren't man-made. So here's one. Let me pull it up. Let's see. Okay, so we've got this thing over here, right, on the right-hand side here. Now, obviously, this is man-made. Is this man-made? Could be, might not be. What about that? Is that a face? How about that? Is that a face? Looks like a face. Is this a face? If this is made by nature on its own, but it looks designed, is it designed? How about that? Is that a person with a helmet that is resting his chin on his hand? Or does it just look like that? If we change the angle, we would see something different. Is it man-made or is it nature-made? What is a design? So you're going to need to provide what a design is. But there, I would say, those rocks that are shaped by natural forces are then non-designed. But then, doctor, the problem becomes, if God made everything, then there is nothing that isn't designed. So there is nothing to compare or contrast things to, is there? So you couldn't point at everything and say, there's a thing that hasn't been designed, and there a thing has been, because everything would be designed. Even those rocks formations into that shape of a face. That would be designed. There's patterns in the solar system. Is that design? Well, if God made it, then yes. But if it's not, if it's just natural forces, then it isn't designed. So the problem is either everything is designed and there's no way to answer this question at all because you couldn't point to anything that wasn't designed, or there is a difference between design with an intent and what has the appearance of design with no intent involved. But that can only exist if God doesn't exist, and or if God winds up the universe and lets it go on its own and steps back and just watches it unwind and is as surprised as you or I would be when things develop, right? Because things are like out of his control at that point. Like he set up the perimeters and let it go, right? He wound it up, let the thing go. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Oh, I didn't think that. Oh, okay. Yeah, I thought that might happen, but I didn't know that was going to happen, right? So there'd have to be unintentional things going on that weren't designed at some level. And then you can get even deeper with this question. There are animals that paint paintings and then they sell the paintings for ridiculous sums of money. Are those paintings designed? Well, the animal painted it, but that they did it. I mean, they didn't know what they were painting. So is the painting designed or not? I don't know. So this is a question that can only be relevant if there is truly undesigned things in the universe to observe in the first place. So I would say, well, is there a example of something that isn't designed so I can point to it and say, well, we know that's not designed and we know that this is designed. But you might as well say, how do you get reality without a realtor? These sort of questions sound, and I'll make this very clear, they sound stupid. Okay? How do you design requires a designer? Nature requires a naturist. The law requires a lawgiver. Derp, derp, derp. It's very, 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 very stupid sounding. And the non-believer is just going to laugh at that sort of thing. So, word to the wise, get rid of that question. Don't have those dumb sounding questions. In fact, well, maybe you should consult with a non-believer before writing an apologetic thing, because we're going to help you to write it. It's going to be a lot less complicated than you're making it. And it's going to take less than an hour as well. Anyways, okay. So yeah, that's that answer. That's number 4. Number 5. How do you solve the problem of evil? No God, no evil, but evil is real. Okay, so that's actually okay, there's a statement and then a question. So how do you solve the problem of evil? That's a you problem, not a me problem. That is a theistic problem. It is not one that the non-theist must address at all, not even a little. The problem of evil, broadly speaking, is the fact that we observe that things aren't very good in this world. Things suffer and die, and we consider that to be pretty darn evil. At least I do. Maybe your definition of evil varies. So, for me, the problem of evil is that there's bad stuff that happens, and I don't like that bad stuff. And if there was an all-powerful being that cared about life, then that bad stuff wouldn't happen. Yet, it happens. So that must mean that, therefore, there isn't an all-powerful, all-loving being out there. Maybe it's very powerful, but it's not all-loving. Maybe it's all-loving, but isn't all-powerful. But it can't be both. Because if it was both, there would be nothing that I would call evil to point at. But there is, therefore, there is. Now you say then after the question, you say, no God, no evil, but evil is real. Well, you're asserting there. That's no longer a question that you're telling your would-be Christian apologist that you're teaching this to. That's not a question that you're posing. So get rid of that, because that doesn't belong there. And you would have to make an argument for that case. So that just doesn't belong under your question at all. So yeah.
The other thing is,
here we
if
go.
you believe that the Bible is true, if you believe in the God of the Bible clearly and specifically says that God created evil. So if there is a problem of evil, ask God why he created evil. There you go.
Yeah, there. That's the voice of my brother, the reasonable theist, is what I sometimes call him, when I'm not calling him words that will get me banned off of YouTube. And words that might also be illegal in my state to utter. Okay, so number 6. How can life be insignificant, have no value? So it's kind of 2 questions in one. Well, I never said, did I say that life was insignificant and or has no value? Like, did I say that? I don't know. Well, I again, so this is like, I would ask this. Do you kill bugs? Have you ever killed a bug? Like, you see a bug and it crawls onto your arm. Do you smash it? Or do you carefully capture it? Do you put out bug traps? Do you kill ants? Cockroaches, spiders? Of course, we all know the only solution to a spider is fire. Lots of fire. Have you ever tried to get rid of vermin like rats or mice? Have you ever put one of those like spike traps that gets the gophers? If you have your own veggie garden, people put those up. What about traps for wildlife? What about eating meat or drinking dairy? All of that comes from us killing animals. So do we value the life of those animals that we kill to consume? What about plants? They're alive. We have to eat plants at the very least. Do we care about the plant's life, or do we view it as less? Maybe we're not saying it's insignificant, but we certainly aren't saying it's at the same level as human life. If you're driving along and a cactus jumps out at you, are you going to swerve to avoid the cactus? I don't think you will. Maybe you will. I don't know. But, I mean, but some life we might consider more valuable than other life. But as far as it being insignificant, well, this is kind of humbling. In comparison to the rest of our universe, we're nothing. We're a dot. We're an insignificant dust mote. That's a humbling idea to think, because it's true, for one. And but it doesn't change it, because life still matters to me. And although in the grand scope of the universe, my existence is insignificant, it's very significant to me and those people that know me and care anything about me, or, want to tell me I'm wrong or whatever. So it can be both insignificant and yet have personal value. Both can be true at the same time, making this kind of a false dichotomy question. But again, this assumes that I've claimed this. How about writing it like this? Do you think life is insignificant? New question. Do you think that life has no value? Those are better questions. All right. Number 7, basically the same as before. How can life be meaningless, objectively / ultimately have no meaning? Because that's the way it is. I mean, that could be an answer. But how about saying, do you think life is meaningless objectively or has no meaning? But I do think it has meaning. The purpose of life is to procreate, broadly speaking. That's a meaning. It's an objective meaning. What's wrong with that? Now, you might say, well, but that doesn't satisfy me personally, and it might not. But it's the objective thing of life, is to make more life and to keep living. That's the objective goal of life. Subjectively, that might not be enough, though. But again, this assumes that I think life is meaningless. All of these questions need to be rewritten, by the way, Doctor. Let's see. How do I put myself so that I'm able to see this? Is this? No, that doesn't. Okay, I'm going to disappear me so I can read the dang thing. Number 8, how can there be no freedom? What do you mean? There is freedom. What are you talking about? Huh? How can there be no freedom? What is that? What? I don't even understand what do you mean by that? I don't understand. What is this question? What are you talking about, Doctor? There is freedom. What do you mean? Well, what do you mean by freedom, I guess might be a good question. How can there be no freedom? There's plenty of ways that there cannot be freedom. Like, depending on how you view freedom, like individual freedom, societal freedom. What do you mean freedom? What does it mean to be free? Like, exactly. Because I don't know. But if you capture somebody in a box that they can't get out of, they are not free to move around as much as they were free before to move around. So in that case, they still have some freedom, but they have limited freedom. So you make the box so small, or that you shape it to them so that they cannot move beyond the point that you want them to move in, which is 0, and you give them a way to breathe so they keep being alive, and you feed them via a tube, I guess, and get rid of their waste, but you turn off all the lights so they can't see anything. So the only thing that they're free to do is keep existing, but they keep dreaming and having ideas. So the only way to stop them from doing that is to kill them, at which point they are dead. So I guess then they don't have freedom because they're dead, but they also don't not have freedom because they're dead. So I think that answers this highly incoherent question that doesn't seem like it belongs on this list at all. And I don't know what it has to do with anything. Maybe later in the lesson you explain it. But again, perhaps you don't need this question at all. Number 9. How can there be no human identity? Huh? Your physical body is always changing. Why do you stay the same person? Okay, so that's like 2 questions and a statement. So this needs to be rephrased and broken into another question. How could there be no human identity? New question. Why do you stay the same person? Okay, so first, is there a human identity? Let's ask that question. That's a better question to ask, Doctor. Is there a human identity? How about we ask that question? Instead of assuming that the person is saying that there's no human identity, how about asking them, is there a human identity, and what do you think it is? Those are two good questions to ask. I don't know that there is or isn't a human identity, so I've never made the statement that there is no human identity, and I don't really know what you mean by that. I don't stay the same person. I change. The me now is extremely different than the me when I was a theist. And I have a whole playlist, Me versus Me, where I talk about my past self and how wrong, utterly wrong I was back then. I was a very different person. So I have changed. I have not stayed the same person. So that part of the question is erroneous. These questions need to be rethought and reworked. Maybe ask a non-theist for help. I'll help you, doctor. Oh yeah, I will. I'm helping you now by doing this video, by the way. Number 10, how can there be no basis for rationality? Well, that assumes that there is no basis for rationality, so I can't answer that loaded question, doctor. There is a basis of rationality. It just might not be the one. Oh my God! It might not be the one that you want. That was another video that is completely wrong. All right, doctor. You need to fix these questions. Desperately need to fix these questions. And I hope that my video has helped you to do so. If you need my help, glad to help you. Okay, doctor? If you want to make a course on apologetics, great. You should probably get a non-theist to help you do that. And I'm happy to help you do it. But I'll make it real easy for you. It's not going to be an hour-long video. It's going to be like the shortest video you've ever made. It's faith. We have faith in God. We have faith in Jesus. We have faith that these things are true. We do not have any empirical evidence for it. We do not have any repeatable tests for it. And all we seem to have are really bad arguments for it. If that seems interesting to you, let me know and I can tell you more about it. My faith is a little bit different than the faith of somebody else, and their faith is going to be different from someone else. And there's no way to know who's right if anyone is indeed right at all. It's just faith. That's it. That's the honest apologist. Of course, that's not a lesson. That's not interesting, but it's true. And I can even give you Bible references to show that the Bible supports that view being true if you wanted to include those into your lesson plan. Now, no, it won't convince the non-believer, but that's okay because you don't have the thing that will convince the non-believer in the first place. You do not have the evidence that the non-believer, broadly speaking, wants, which is empirical evidence of the phenomenon in question. Not things that point to it or suggest it or hint at it, but of the thing itself. You don't have that. No one does. Nor do you have any repeatable, controllable test that we can perform to show that this thing is a thing in the first place. A coherent test that we could run in laboratories. When prayer tests, for example, have been done, the result shows what we'd expect from chance, and sometimes not very, good results as well we've seen. So prayer is not effective, or it can't be tested. But if you don't have anything that can be tested, what do you possibly have? Well, you have arguments, okay? When we examine those arguments for validity, some are valid, but none are sound. I haven't seen one that's sound, not even a little, because arguments reflect reality. And you must ground your logic to reality. So you're going to have to make sure that the thing is true in the first place and isn't committing an appeal to ignorance or an appeal to personal incredulity or any other logical fallacy. All of these questions are nothing but how do you know X, with the underlying implication being that if I don't know the answer, then the answer must therefore be God. Even if that's not what you're intending to do, that's how it comes off. So apologetics doesn't work in the way that you think it does. What it does do is offer an intellectual comfort for the believers that are out there that need to feel like their faith is based in intellect rather than spirituality. which is completely opposed to what the Bible teaches, but who cares about that? Oh, right. The theist that's a Christian should care about that. So there shouldn't be theist apologists, or at least their methods should be far different than what we see, and their videos would only be like a minute long. Oh well. Anyways, doctor, let me know if I can help you out with your apologetic series, because I'd make it a lot shorter for you, and I'd get rid of all these questions, and and help you out in other ways. I don't think you want my help though, but let me know if you do. Thanks for watching, everybody else. Answer these questions if you want in the description below. That's where you put comments. You put comments in the description now, and the description goes in the comments. That's how things work. Stop laughing at me. I said what I wanted to say. I didn't screw that up. Shut up. Thanks for watching, everybody. Whee!